What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the PPI reports that just came out. That was actually a little bit harder than expected in some metrics. What's happening with some earnings? I'm going to be very quick about that, and then break down some news about Tesla. But before I break into all this information, let me just say a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. You deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, this thing is trying to pop a little bit in the pre-market, but we haven't been able to hold above 170 yet. That's going to be our resistance on Tesla. And the question is, can we break past this, or are we about to get another rejection, start sinking? I'll be giving you guys some answers in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's talk about some data. So this morning, we got PPI and the initial jobless claims, and the data was not looking too great. PPI year over year was 1.6% above expectations of 1%. That's a sign that right now the producer price index is actually going up for all items. Core PPI year over year was up to 2%. This is actually aligned with expectations. Core PPI month over month was at 0.3%. That's the increase we got, aligned with expectations. But then not core, but PPI for all items month over month was at 0.6%. That is above expectations. This suggests that there could be another increase in all items CPI. Inflation is going up just a bit. We didn't really get this for basically core. Core was as expected, but for all items CPI, there is a risk of that going up now. There is a risk of inflation again. The Fed has to be very, very careful. Initial jobless claims was a little bit lower than expected, showing some strength in the labor market. Besides that, that is it for data for now. Now, later on today, we do have business inventories coming out at 10 a.m., which might not affect us too much. That's 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. At 11:30 a.m., we have the 4-week and 8-week bill auctions. Then at noon, we have the 15-year and 30-year mortgage rates. All of this is very minor data, may not affect the market much, but those are worth noting. For earnings, we just had Dollar General and Dick's Sporting Goods, and then Adobe's coming out later on for today. Dollar General did very, very well for earnings. On top of this, we ended up seeing very, very nice projections with a good sales demand. And you can see right here, the 2024 estimates are aligned with expectations, which is good earnings. This is why the share price is up. Dick's Sporting Goods had very strong earnings because they beat on EPS and revenue. Their overall fiscal forecasts are actually showing stronger profits than expected, not to mention good growth overall. And overall, good revenue, not to mention their dividend is being raised by 10%, so it's bullish overall for the company. S&P 500 and NASDAQ, they're at some tight resistance levels. We'll be watched for that, especially on the Dow. The House just passed a measure on Wednesday calling for more restrictions on TikTok. We'll see what the Senate ends up doing with the bill, but this is going to be very important because it is controlled by a foreign adversary. So that's going to be important. We'll see how this affects TikTok, which is involved in the lives of millions of Americans. So that's something worth noting. Under Armour is going to be under new management as the founder, Kevin Plank, is going to return his role as the CEO. That's important. And then besides that, there's been a lot of talk about consumer demand slowing for the EVs right now. This is very important. Ford, GM, and the others are kind of backing away or delaying their EV plans temporarily because sales are not the strongest for now, but they are still predicted to increase for years to come. Even Elon Musk said that there could be somewhat of a lower rate of growth even for this year. What is good news for Tesla is that right now, Wedbush maintains that Tesla is going to outperform the market with a $315 price target as Q1 2024 ends. So they're basically saying they're maintaining this towards the end of Q1. They're not saying that by Q1 it's going to go up to 300. They're saying they still maintain this price target for the long term. They also mentioned that they're bullish overall, that Tesla is going to likely be on track of reaching 2.1 to 2.2 million deliveries, which is some good news for them. That's why Tesla kind of pumps a little bit in the pre-market. And besides that, they do acknowledge the fact that there is a lot of competition and such, but they're still very confident in Tesla's long-term growth. So that is a decent piece of news that came out for today. Tesla's also going to be announcing some software updates, but don't forget that despite all this decent news, there was still a lot of bad news that trumped this with what was said about Deutsche Bank kind of cutting their deliveries targets, not to mention Wells Fargo cutting their price target. There's still a lot of bad news also circulating for Tesla simultaneously. We just got a new good piece of news, which helped Tesla pop a bit in the pre-market, but now Tesla's fighting resistance. So what do I think is going to pan out for the chart? Here is my simple answer. As far as Tesla goes, despite some decent news, the share price is still looking kind of bearish to me. So we have Tesla right over here. Still looks kind of bearish. We are testing resistance right here at this 169.5 area to 170. Then we have 172 and 174 as resistance, and then we have 168 as support. I would say that Tesla may pop and drop upon open, especially if the market starts turning. Tesla could retest 170. There is 172 above them, not really counting on breaking out too much. Could pop a bit and make its way back down lower. So I'll be watching this 167.8 to 168 support. If we lose that, 165, there's a risk of 165. It's also been trying to hold around 166.3, very minor support. 165 is going to be our next target if this thing continues to sink. And below that, we have 162. I predict that it's going to kind of pop a little bit and then it kind of shuffle, make its way back down, maybe drop a little bit lower, closer to 165, come back up, trade a little bit sideways, but it's still going to be kind of weak throughout the day because not even a bullish piece of news helped Tesla really get much of a balance. It's still relatively weak in terms of its share price, and Tesla is one of the most shorted stocks, so I wouldn't be surprised if these shorts continue to just dictate Tesla the way they've been. For SPY, this thing is looking a little bit weaker now. So SPY basically pushed to a new all-time high, but this was just a liquidity grab up here. It's trying to turn just a little bit. We have this gap to fill down here at 516.5, but here are some important levels on SPY. On the 30 minutes time frame, we have the 50 EMA at 516.5, and that's going to be our critical support for the day. So for resistance watch, basically 517.5 and then 518 as critical resistance levels. If it breaks the all-time high, then 519 is coming. If we continue to turn, watch 516.5 as key support. If we lose this, there is going to be a risk of it coming down to 515.8, 515.5, and eventually 515 flat. So we have a lot of areas worth watching. And if we lose that, there's going to be a bigger drop to 514.2. Overall, SPY is looking a little bit weaker because the PPI data, the inflationary data, was harder than expected this morning. So I think it could try to pop again. We could see a little pop here and there, but there's a risk of it coming down to fill this gap to at least 516.5. And we'll see if it continues to break from there, but it could actually drop lower. So just be very, very careful. The data was not too good. A little pop and drop is a possibility, and it could sink a little bit lower to fill that gap. So just be very, very careful. Onto the QQQ, I'm seeing something very similar. QQQ is kind of range bound. We have our support at this 440 area. 442 is kind of like our resistance, which is not as tough, and 444 has sort of been stuck for the last couple of days. I think that the QQQ could kind of pop and then drop. We're going to be watching support at 440. If we lose this, watch 438, then 436. I believe that the QQQ has a risk of dropping a bit lower, looking a little bit weaker in terms of share price, also thanks to Nvda. But watch 440 as key support. As of right now, it's still range bound, so it may maintain this range for some time, shuffle a bit, but there is a risk of it dropping a little bit lower because of the fact that inflation came out hot and because of how the chart's looking. It's also because of Nvda. So on Nvda, I drew out two lines. Notice this yellow line on top is our key resistance. The yellow line on the bottom is our key support. Why do I say that? Because we have a possible cup and handle like structure. So this is resembling an inverse cup and handle like right here. If we lose, 885, there's a risk of this coming down to 877 and 872 all the way down to this imbalance. If we break out, watch 900 and 908 as resistance. If it breaks past 908, it could push even higher. The chart on Nvidia is looking a little bit weaker. We've lost 900. The data was not the best. We saw a liquidity grab before it came back down lower. So there is a risk, in my opinion, that it's going to test 885 and maybe sink a bit lower. And this could slow the QQQ down. So I want to warn you all to be very, very careful for today. The market is not in the strongest of places. For Aapl is just kind of stuck within this range. It's been range trading for many, many days. We have 174 as resistance, 172.5 as resistance. Our key support's 170.9, and we also have 170 below that. What's it been doing? Back and forth all day, basically. So it could pop to 172.5, but I'm not really expecting it to break out much. It might pop and then drop back down to 170.9, come back up, and just trade sideways. That's all I'm really seeing on Aapl, not really a whole lot. So guys, SPY does have a risk of kind of selling off a bit, which could dictate Tesla. So be a little bit careful. PPI was harder than expected. As far as Tesla goes, Tesla has popped a little bit, grabbed liquidity at 170. Now it's coming back down. So there's going to be a risk of Tesla coming back down despite some bullish news that came out. It could still come down thanks to SPY and others. Try to come back up around between 165 and 166. We could see some buyers try to defend it, push it back up again. It's going to remain in this range, be kind of tight for some time, but I do see it slowly declining. So it might pump, drop, come back up, decline a little bit, and slowly slow down. All right, anyways, that is it for the video. Hope this video was helpful with all the different levels. I'll see you guys very soon in just a couple of hours. Thank you, and peace out.